John Quinones, what would you do? We see what people would do, and most of the time people are amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I have so much hope in humanity because I'm watching people speak up for someone that is in a hijab that's being treated badly, or speak up for someone that is, gay and being refused service at a bakery. Isn't it amazing that we are shifting?
Yeah. I love watching that. So it makes me feel better.
Yeah. That's my jam. I love that because I care about how we connect as humans, and I see we are connecting. Things are getting better. So I never want to do a show, as my one grandmother always said to me, you never extend a hand to push someone down without giving them a hand to pull them up. So, yeah, we got to talk about racism. Yeah, it's a real thing. We have to talk about police brutality. It's a real thing. But there are moments where you have to shine light on the good things, because that is how we see into the future, is that little light that shines, that gets us to a different place. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I think that as a consciousness and as a humanity, I think our vibration is raising every single day, and we are more and more aware. People are taking the time to do what Dina has suggested and educate themselves and learn new things. And in fact, I would say this, which brings us to my kind of last point here, is we have maybe entered the era of over-political correctness. And I never thought I would say that. Because when political correctness started, I thought, this is wonderful. People are being nice. I was so happy. But now I'm like, okay, literally you can almost do nothing without offending somebody. And even though I want us all to be kind and sweet, I wonder about that. What do you think about do you think we're over the top political correctness? Or do you think that this is like on par? It needs to be this way?
I think I've said before, I think if you exchange political correctness for respect, and you hear some of the things people say in that context, like, you'll realize what assholes they sound like.
Yeah.
Oh, we're being too respectful towards trans people. Like, no, like, you need to use the correct pronouns. Like, it's not, I mean, and there's points where, like, I've seen people, especially online, it's very difficult, like, people can be a tame, where, like, they'll loop back around to being disrespectful again, and that's not what you want to see. But in general, I don't think you can be too respectful of things like that. I mean, you can't be too not racist. You can't be too, So there's no, I mean, and I feel like a lot of times you only hear that from people who don't want to, like, use correct pronouns for, a trans person, or, do these, they want to be able to tell racist jokes. And, like, those are things that are very much not, they're very main things in being politically correct. I'm using air quotes like you can see me. Things that, like, we definitely shouldn't be doing, but they want to do them, and so they're going to be like, oh, they've gone too far with political correctness. Like, no, we just want you to be nice.
Right.
So, no, I don't necessarily think you can go too far with being a respectful human being. I mean, you don't want to get found by people, like, you don't want to be a pushover, but, I mean, if somebody says, like, hey, what you said is hurting me, like, you should definitely be taking that into consideration. And maybe, I feel like a lot of times, especially with celebrities, they'll do something that's definitely really crappy. And instead of being like, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that, they'll be like, well, I'm really sorry you guys were offended. I didn't realize that, and they'll make all these excuses. Like, no, just apologize. Like, so no, I think it definitely, like, if you just think about it before you say things, like, it's not difficult to be respectful.
Right. And you had also made a great point about the majority asking whether, like, fill in the blank is okay to allow someone to do. Like, let's say, should we allow women the right to XYZ? Should gays be allowed to XYZ? Should we allow transgenders to serve in the military? What are your thoughts on that?
People should mind their own fucking business.
Hashtag word. The thing that's always perplexed me, especially about the women's stuff, what is up with people, men, white men? This is really what it boils down to, because this is the majority of our Senate and Congress and our political structure. What is up with them wanting to make sure that what we do with our bodies, it is mind-blowingly perplexing to me. I don't understand it. Why do they care so much? Because it doesn't affect their bodies. And in regards to the transgender thing, one of the things that was cited as the reason for not allowing this to happen any further, though it was never consulted with any generals or anybody, and nobody knew about it, the Pentagon didn't know. Nobody knew. It was just something he decided. He said it was the cost. And I'm not a transgendered person, and I do know transgendered people, though, however, but I am not a transgender person. So in my personal life, I don't have a dog in the fight. But as a human, I'm like, okay, the cost, I get it. There's a lot of cost. I mean, I'm reasonable. I'm intelligent. I understand that. But when I do a little research and find out that you spend 5 times more on Viagra, which I had no idea was even happening in the military, than what you would spend to maintain whatever trans persons are there, which is a minimal amount at this point. I'm like, how come your penises take priority? That's okay to have the cost expenditure for that, but for helping someone kind of be in the right space in their life, that doesn't take. A person who's putting their life on the line. So I get that these men are putting their life on the line. Viagra is a priority to them, so they make sure that they get lots of Viagra, I guess. But that just blew me away. I was like, so that's not a weird cost at all. Everybody's penises need to work while they're in the military. That matters a lot. I mean, I get it, you know. It's guys. They care about that. But what did you think about that? That was just an aside that we hadn't planned on talking about, but it just was like, what?
I didn't really know. I mean, I didn't really know what to think because what is he going to do about it? You can't tweet and make something happen. And I do really, that was like one of my big concerns, like, does he actually think that is passing a policy? Like, does he actually think that they're going to kick anybody who is trans out of the military now because he tweeted about it? And so that was like my number one thought was like, does he actually think that Twitter is a way to pass policy? Because I'm very confused about that. I didn't know we could just tweet stuff and make it happen, so I'm going to be using that a lot more. But also, like, what do you care? Like, what does it matter what somebody's genitals are? Like, and sometimes I'm worried about saying things because, like, I feel like I'm going into the point of, like, being that, like, over the top, like, don't believe in gender, all that stuff. But, like, in general, like, if you read all sorts of scientific studies, gender's not even really a thing. So, I just don't understand why it's anybody else's business. Like, why do you care, you know, what gender somebody is if they're willing to serve?
Right, and we had talked about this, too, about various ethnicities throughout centuries having very gender-fluid persons in their tribes, in their groups, in their social structures. I had an interview back in December with a woman named Heather who talked about the mysteries of the Mahu, and the Mahu were the transgendered people of Hawaii. And so that was what they were called, was Mahu. They were both man and woman. They embodied both aspects, and they were revered, actually, for having both, for being able to bring forward both. I understand it's a new thing. We've got to get used to it for our country, you know, but it's been going on forever, everywhere, for always, okay? There are a lot of things that have been going on that maybe we've switched to and we don't do anymore, but it's still, and when I say that, I'm actually thinking about the Greeks and the way that they mentored and tutored boys, and I'm like, well, that's not a part of our social norm, but it did happen. You know what I mean? So we evolve in our thinking, so let's evolve here as well. But the whole Viagra thing, I was like, really? I was like, you guys care so much about whether we get a pap smear or not, but you can have as much Viagra as you need, or if we go to Planned Parenthood or whatever the case may be.
Which they're trying to shut down. And they also, they won't cover birth control, but they cover Viagra. I mean, it's a really great way to, you know, you got to take away smaller rights so you can continue to move up and take away rights in general. And somebody did say this, you know, calling transgender people a burden and making them kind of like a commodity that their value's not as much as their, you know, what they're being paid is a really great way of dehumanizing them. It's really the start of fascism. That's how you get rid of a group of people, is by starting by dehumanizing them and just continuing from there. And they do that a lot, and that is how, you know, that's how straight white men have kept their power. They take away small rights over time and continue to take away bigger rights.
And that is what I think all of this, the last 3-4 years, has been about, is about the feeling. Well, the way that I described it to a friend of mine, she said, what do you think is going on? She's a Republican. She's very conservative. And I said, I feel like it's the dinosaur age dying. I feel like it's death throes that's happening. So it's going to be really extreme, and it's going to feel like, oh, they may not ever lose it. But I feel like we're in like these death throes and death rattles for a majority that has held power for so long, and they do see the world changing. And I put myself in their shoes sometimes to say, how would I feel if that had been my experience? Because it's never been my experience. It's easy for me to be like, sure, spread the wealth around, give everybody a chance to feel like they're human and part of our society. But they have, can you imagine what this feels like for them? I'm sure it's terrifying. And I think that we're seeing that terror being played out in many ways because the world is shifting. We are evolving. We are inclusive. We do acknowledge everybody. You can be anything you want to be. The principles that our founding fathers decreed, are actually happening. You know, we are holding these truths to be self-evident that all men are considered equal. All men, women, trans, everybody is considered equal. And I think that what you just said is brilliant about the fact that they take away small rights. It's insidious. That is so smart, and it's so true. That is the beginning of fascism, and that's what I've been concerned about. But when you're watching it happening as a minority, you don't get to really speak to it. You speak about it amongst yourselves. It's called kitchen table talk, but it's not something you're really verbalizing to the majority because you have to understand your place. And I know that sounds insane to anybody that might be listening that isn't in a place where they have to know their place, but that is something that you were taught in order to survive in this country is about knowing your place depending on what minority you are. So anyway, Dina, fantastic conversation. I could talk to you all day about this because it is so important, but also it's nice to talk to someone and have a meeting of the minds, and it doesn't matter what color we are. You and I share some similar views, and for that I'm grateful. And you educate me too. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yes, always, guys. And hopefully maybe we'll have Dina back before long. We'll say before long we'll have Dina back to talk about some more things. But I so appreciate it because I think it's an important perspective to bring. So thank you for coming and joining us on Evolve. And I want you to have a fantastic day. Okay, Dina? Okay, I think Dina has gone. And so, wasn't she great, guys? I so enjoy talking to her, and like I said, she keeps me together with things. Whatever I'm writing, it's gone through Dina. So, Dina is fantastic that way, and she's introspective, and as I said, she is smart as a whip. Now, we only have a few more minutes left in the show, but I wanted to get into something that has been on my mind, and I talked about it and hinted at it, and it is called respectability politics. So, for those of you that are not aware of what respectability politics are, it's a concept that's existed for a long time, and the term itself is relatively new, the term, and there is a professor, Evelyn Brooks Higginbottom, who was credited with first articulating it, and it appears in her 1993 book, Righteous Disconnect, The Women's Movement in the Black Baptist Church, 1880 through 1920. What it is it's generally defined as what happens when a minority and or a marginalized groups are told or they teach themselves that in order to receive better treatment from the group in power, they must behave better. And it's alluded to as being the way that you will survive. It's a concept that's existed within Black America since Black people have been in America. The idea that if we walk a little straighter and we write a little neater and we speak a little clearer, then white people, the person in power, will treat us better. Now, this belief has resulted in some of the most forgettable parts of Black history. The Black History Month lessons we really, really, really need to be taught, but maybe haven't been taught. So, respectability politics is that. Now, I know you might think, well, Monette, are you just saying, like, white people make you have respectability politics? No. Probably the worst offenders of teaching or imparting respectability politics are Black people, and it starts when you're young. The first lesson that a Black person, and this is kitchen table talk, so this means that this is not something that if you are not Black that you might be privy to understanding. The first lesson that people are taught from their parents is, you will have to work harder. If you're Black or a minority, you'll have to work harder, be smarter, do better to be considered even a third-class citizen, where your white counterpart might be considered a first-class citizen. If you want to graduate in school, you'll have to be smarter, be better. Recently, there was a young girl in a town, I'm forgetting it now, in our country, and this just happened in the last 6 weeks, a Black girl who graduated valedictorian of her class. There had never been a Black valedictorian. She was the first one to have happen in the school's 100-year history, and they let a white woman be the valedictorian who had a lower GPA than her. She had